The Pledge of Allegiance. You can't visit without getting stuck.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You remain standing, please. A moment of silence for the brave men and women that protect the daily, nightly basis with the armed services, police, fire, EMS. God bless those that keep us safe. Give them the fortitude to continue doing so. Godspeed to those that have given their lives on our behalf. Thank you.
First, I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. Are we live streaming?
I certainly hope so.
Okay, hopefully we're live streaming. Chairman's report. Is anyone else recording? Okay. The board has met in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss a police labor issue. Okay. The Westchester Area Council of Governments will be holding a public workshop on regional energy planning on Thursday, July 11th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the West Whiteland Township Building.
Jan, can I just make a little addendum that we've updated this flyer for that?
Okay.
There's a, and I'll send that out tomorrow, but there's an Eventbrite registration. We're trying to get a sense of head count because there's some focus groups and things we want to do. So if you're interested in attending, there will be a constant contact message that goes out about it, but we'd be grateful if you could sign up on that Eventbrite link. It's a great opportunity to share your thoughts and concerns about clean energy in our region.
This is, the COG has a goal of 100% renewable electricity by 2035 and 100% renewable energy by 2050. And they're looking for public input to make this goal a reality. The board is accepting public comments. Skip it. The board is accepting public comments on proposed improvements at the King Road and Route 352 intersection. And I'd like to talk about that for a moment. At the East Whiteland Board of Supervisors meeting, they decided to take the roundabout option off the table, which was one of the options that was discussed at the July 5th meeting. June 5th meeting with East Whiteland. And at that meeting, we're looking for, some of the citizens were interested in a 4-phase option, which is basically to take the intersection and just have each road have its own separate light to go for, so you would not have any conflict. And that would get rid of some of the left turns that were problematic. Both Pannoni and PennDOT said that this 4-phase option would not work because the phases would be too short in the 80-second cycle. I started wondering why the cycle couldn't be increased to maybe 100 or 105 seconds, where each phase would then have a sufficient time to accommodate the turns. The queues would be longer. It's a level of service F now, and it's still still be a level of service F, but it would be a much safer intersection. So I'm gonna ask Rick to contact East Whiteland and see if they would send a letter to PennDOT asking whether that scenario is even possible. Any comments from
Yes, I have one scenario to add to it, and maybe it was explained, and I don't know, and I did not assimilate a response that there was one, and that would be instead of adding an additional option, one of the options was to construct left turn lanes in every direction, King Road, east, west, 352 north and south. And why not have an option scenario of left turn lanes just on Route 352 and leave King Road alone? Just a question. If it was answered previously, I'm sorry if I missed it.
That's possible. There is already, you would end up with left turn lanes on 352, and the existing westbound King Road already has a left turn lane. So you would, we would save the one lane.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
The difference between that and the scenario that I was suggesting is, in order to put those left turn lanes, you would have to take property
Yes.
from the houses along 352. And if you drive by there, the houses are very close to the road, so you'd be taking in a considerable part of their front yard.
Yeah, it was more of a question. I'm not sure I would support that one either.
I'm just asking the question.
I got you.
PennDOT was not too enthusiastic about it because it did not improve the queues or the level of service, but I'd like to ask the question because it does improve safety.
Anyone that was at that meeting on the 5th? Okay, so you good. I appreciate your attendance at that one.
Next on the,
Let me say something, Jen.
sure,
I've been around for a long time. I have never, ever had more people contact me about that intersection since that meeting than any other thing that has been before the board in 30-some years. It's a long time. Many, many people, vast majority, as a matter of fact, were interested in what they call the four-phase approach that Janet described. I said, I had no idea what's going on because East Whiteland's going to make a decision, at least they said so, at their meeting in July, which is around the middle of the month. It's hard to predict what's going to happen until you see what they're going to do. On the other hand, a question was asked of the PennDOT rep that was there, who's one of the people that make decisions regarding what can and can't be done. And he said that categorically, that four-phase approach would be rejected by PennDOT. Now, that doesn't mean you can't ask for clarification, but that's his position. He was there at the request, I guess, of East Whiteland or whoever, and he said that point blank. So the people that I encountered, which were many, I just said, I have no idea whether it's going to be feasible or not. The only way you're going to find out is by asking, and hopefully they respond. And I would say that people that have contact or ran into me someplace, church, Wawa, ACAC, all over the place. I said to myself, my goodness gracious, we're going to have to make sure that when we finally have a meeting about this, when we have enough information, we're going to have to be able to answer that question about the four phases. So Janet is correct, in my opinion, in asking about it. What ends up being the options that are left, besides doing nothing, is I don't know. And I don't know if the board knows, but I certainly don't know. I'm pretty sure that Janet was correct about East Whiteland not wanting to take any houses, take any properties fully. It's understandable. I wouldn't want to do that either. And that would eliminate right then and there the runabout. So whether that's off the table or not, I'm not sure. Janet says it is, it is. So we go from there. So I just want people to realize that we have, or at least I, have gotten an awful lot of comments. And I'm talking about maybe 30 to 50 people that have run into me. That's a lot of people. And almost universally, that's the position they were taking. So I think it's incumbent upon us to find out whether that's going to be doable or not doable. And I go from there then. That's all I'm doing.
okay. Moving on, there's been some discussion about the inadvertent returns, that's from the Sunoco project on Boot Road near Wilson Drive. And, the board has been working with Carolyn Committa to try to arrange some testing for that. And, here's a letter that we got from Carolyn. Sunoco has agreed to do a sonogram test, to test for how strong the rock and foundation and under the road substructure, thank you. PennDOT will try to have someone there to observe the integrity of the test, and the test will be conducted at the end of June, early July. Part of Boot Road will be closed during that test. A copy of the test, part of the question is whether the results of that test will be available to everyone. A copy of the test will be delivered directly to PennDOT for their review. And PennDOT will have their own geologists review the test results and make sure the test was done correctly and that it's interpreted correctly. PennDOT does not think there is a problem with the integrity of the road subsurface at this time, but they're doing this test because we were concerned and we wanted to be sure that everything was okay. Next, emergency services. What? Oh, sorry, public comment. We're gonna keep the public comment down to 15 minutes because we have several hearings tonight. And if we'd like to get out of here at a reasonable hour.
Hi, Michelle Truitt, 1430 Brandon Lane. So who was actually going to be, I thought that there was discussion about having the township get an independent person come out to do a geology test. Was that something that?
No, the request was made to have Sunoco, PennDOT, we requested PennDOT conduct a test on the roadway.
Okay.
And PennDOT agreed to reach out to Sunoco, and they did, and as John explained, Sunoco will pay for the test, do the test. The PennDOT state geologist will, I guess if they want, will observe it, be there and observe it, but then we'll review the results.
So Sunoco performing the test?
Sunoco will have Sunoco won't do anything, they hire somebody. So they'll pay for the engineering firm to do the test, and then the PennDOT geologists will review it and monitor it.
And
It's exactly the same thing they do with a PUC, where the applicant does all the stuff and this PUC just observes it, reviews it.
thanks.
Any other? Okay, we'll move on. Chief Bernard?
Why were you hiding in the back?
Because I need to get to another meeting
How
after
will
this
we
one.
know that? But we would do it if you sat in the front also. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully it's on.
Yes.
Several things I want to highlight. Number one, 3 weeks ago, we launched a citizen camera registry. If you have a business or a home that has a camera and you're willing to share footage with us, you can go on to our website and register. That way, if an incident or a crime occurs near where your business or your house is, we know to immediately contact you and see if you're willing to share footage with us. It helps to make your community safer and help us solve crimes quicker. Also, we are currently accepting applications for the Citizens Police Academy. It's a 13-week program where residents spend approximately 3 hours, one night a week for 13 weeks, and you get an insider's view of what police departments do, what we do, how we do it, why we do it. Some of the highlights that have always been popular with our residents is you get to play CSI. You also get to play with SWAT equipment. You get a tour of the 911 center from an insider's point of view. And also you get to learn how DUI arrests are made. You get to watch the field sobriety test being given, and you actually get to go to court to see what that experience is like. Residents are welcome to join us. We're very excited about our department, and we hope that you're interested in learning something about how we do business. With regard to our Crime Watch, by show of hands, how many people here are registered to receive information from our Crime Watch program? It is very valuable information about things that are going on in your community. Everything from lost property, lost dogs, found dogs, but also some of the crimes that are occurring. We've had enormous success with making arrests for burglaries, retail thefts, a number of crimes, and most recently, the biggest incident was a pursuit that started in East Goshen Township, traveled through 4 jurisdictions before ending in a crash at the intersection of Shiloh Road and 926. The 2 individuals in that car were arrested for multiple burglaries. And we were very happy because they were wanted by the U.S. Marshals authorities in Delaware State. So we were very pleased that we were able to finally apprehend them and take them off the roads.
And that came from a tip, didn't it?
It turned out that the U.S. Marshals were looking for these individuals and received information that they might be in our area. Within 15 minutes of our officers starting to look for them, they found them.
Wow. Great timing.
Yeah, great timing, great police work, and luckily nobody was hurt during the crash. One other thing I'd like to do a quick little plug. If there is anybody here who is interested in supporting law enforcement training and education, I've got just the thing for you. The Chester County Chiefs of Police Association does an annual fundraiser, which is a golf tournament, and we're looking for either individuals or corporate sponsors, because 100% of the proceeds go towards providing training for police officers. There's never been a more important time for police officers to be well trained, and all the proceeds go towards providing training to police departments throughout the county. There are some police departments that cannot afford to send their officers away for various types of training, and this helps them so that they can. So if anybody is interested, I'll leave some flyers here, and I hope that we get some sponsors.
I think Michael and I should go.
Yes, we're looking for golfers too.
Except I would take all the rewards, wouldn't I?
Well, we might win, but if someone's gonna sponsor me, I'll be happy to play on their behalf. I'll
It's at the
donate my
Phoenixville
prizes to them.
Country Club. I don't know if that's a good course or not.
Where is that?
Phoenixville Country Club.
That's a nice course.
See, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that was a reference today in the Daily Local News, and they used a very, what was the esteemed,
Did they really?
esteemed Phoenix, and I thought, boy, I heard that was married, but I heard that was.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Thank you, Chief.
Are there any questions from the board or from residents?
I hope you get a good sign up for the police academy.
I do too.
Well
Everyone
worth-
I know who has taken it has been very impressed.
well
It's a
worth-
commitment though, too. I mean,
It is.
it's, 3 months.
And we have 2 people in the room who could speak firsthand about, we have David and we have Eric.
And me, and me.
Oh,
I was the
Before
one
my
of the
time.
first ones.
were you? Okay.
I was the first.
Then we've changed a lot since
And I
then.
passed. Barely.
They just want to move you through.
Tough crowd.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
I would say so.
No,
All
no.
right, Carmen, you're up.
About what? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we have our monthly report for our fire companies at EMS, and this will be for East Goshen Township only. Goshen Fire Company had 30 fires. They had 14 fire police calls. They had 189 ambulance-related, EMS-related, which gives us a total for Goshen Fire Company of 233 calls. Malvern for May had 11 basic life support with 10 transports, 21 ALS, which is advanced life support, with 13 transports, total of 32. Good Fellowship, which covers the western end of our township, had 62 calls, which is 12.4% of their total volume, just to give you an idea. I believe all the reports are online. So if there are no questions, we can move on.
Thank you. Financial,
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As of May 31st is the peak as far as cash flow because we've finished collecting real estate taxes and we have gotten the biggest month from our income tax as a result of the April 15th deadline. So we had a surplus of a little over $1.3 million in the general fund, but compared to budget, we have a positive budget variance of $224,000. So we're in a good position, not a great position, but we're doing pretty well. All the operating departments were under budget except for Public Works, which was nominally over budget by about $5,000. And that was really just due to the timing of some storm sewer work, all that stuff down in Ashbridge and down there. On the revenue side, I'm starting to get a little concerned about our income tax. It doesn't look so bad here, but it's not doing so hot in June, so that might start to underperform as we get through the year. But real estate transfer tax is just doing great, and the receipts that we got last week were fantastic. So definitely between commercial and residential real estate, the market is very strong. Local services tax for some reason is underperforming. I don't have a great reason for that, but
Local services tax.
yeah. Otherwise, other funds are in a fine position. Nothing really out of the ordinary to report there. And so next month, all of you will come back next month, I'm sure, to hear me deliver the first year-end projection for 2019, one of the exciting inflection points of the supervisor's calendar.
John, have you asked Keystone to for a list, if you haven't seen it recently, of the top 10 EIT? Any unusual changes in the top 10?
No. Remember, I did that like a month or two ago. But yeah, it was fairly consistent, and it's just sort of plateaued rather than it's not growing at that.
And there are
2%,
obviously not anybody that's disappeared from that list.
Nobody
Retired.
Yeah, I mean, East Ocean's large enough that there's no single taxpayer. I was talking to somebody in another township who the founder of Comcast lived there.
Yeah.
He passed away a year ago, and the EIT fell by like 25%.
Oh, wow.
Well,
East Ocean is large enough and has a wealthy enough tax base that there's no single individual that they can move the needle that way. That's good.
Thanks.
Any questions? We'll move on to the minutes. We have two sets of minutes, I think we'll do them separately. First is for our June 4th meeting. Any comments or corrections?
No, thanks for your usual careful review, Janet.
Is there a motion?
Separately?
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the draft minutes of our June 4th, 2019 meeting with the corrections that have either been called and or emailed in.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And just to comment for the June 5th meeting, if the motion could say, after you approve them, like, subject to approval by West Whiteland Township.
East.
Sorry, East Whiteland, yeah.
Yeah, we could put West Whiteland in too.
The next set of minutes are from the joint meeting between East Goshen and East Whiteland Township. And they had already approved the minutes as they are written here. And we've made a couple of small changes to them. So it's gonna have to go back to them to agree with what we have put in.
Madam Chairman, I would like to give John Olshaw credit for doing this. You know, there was a lot of back and forth, but I would like to make a motion that we approve the June 5th meeting of the draft minutes once reaffirmed by East Whiteland Township.
As correct.
I'll second that.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we'll come to the treasurer's report.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, I had a couple of questions on John for the easements. I was just curious that they come right out of the bond fund for any expenses, which they do. I just wanted to make sure that they didn't go someplace before that. But moving on, does anybody have any questions on any of the invoices in front of us? If not, Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we graciously accept the receipts and pay the bills as listed in our register once approved.
Second that.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. We have we have two public hearings tonight. Ryan, would you like to take over, please?
Absolutely, thank you. We can go ahead and open the record for tonight's first public hearing. This evening, we will conduct a public hearing as part of the regularly scheduled public meeting to consider the adoption of an amendment to the East Goshen Township Code, which would add a new chapter, namely Chapter 119. The title and summary of the proposed ordinance amendment is as follows. An ordinance amending the East Goshen Township Code to add a new chapter 119 titled Communication Amplification Systems to establish minimum regulations applicable to emergency communications systems in certain buildings within East Goshen Township. By way of ordinance amendment introduction and background, the township finds that the ability of police, fire, ambulance, and other emergency service providers and personnel to communicate with one another during events and incidents to be of vital public importance. While the township has already adopted statewide building codes and the state fire prevention code, the board now wishes to adopt further regulation to ensure the proper management, care, and control of the township while maintaining the peace, health, safety, and welfare of all its citizens and guests. The ordinance is based largely off of a model county ordinance from Chester County and to serve these purposes and contains common definitions and provisions. There hasn't been much variation between the model county ordinance and that which is before the board for potential adoption this evening. Without getting into too much detail, the ordinance addresses amplification systems, testing procedures, field testing, and exemptions. In layman's terms, what the ordinance is intended to do is to ensure effective communication between emergency service personnel in certain events and incidents, just to ensure that there's proper communication so that the incidents and events can be handled as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So that's much of what the ordinance regulates and establishes. One of the notable exemptions, I made reference to exemptions, one of the notable exemptions is buildings with a height of 35 feet or less. So if you're sitting there now wondering if you're subject to this ordinance, so long as your home or business is 35 feet or less in height, your building will not be subject to the regulations being imposed this evening. By way of hearing exhibits, I'd just like to introduce 3 exhibits. First, exhibit board or B1, which is a proof of publication, which was advertised in the Daily Local News on June 10th, 2019. Exhibit B2, which is a letter dated May 29th, 2019, to the Chester County Law Library, which provides the proposed ordinance for public inspection. And lastly, Exhibit B3, another letter of that same date, May 29th, 2019, to the Daily Local News, providing the proposed ordinance amendment for public inspection. At this time, I'd ask if there are any questions of any members of the board regarding this ordinance.
Ryan, yes, please. I just want to clarify your comment on the exemptions on the 35-foot, particularly height that you referenced. That is provided that those buildings do not make use of any metal construction, so that if someone has used, for instance, metal studs and framing, if you will, metal framing, that they would not be exempt from this, irrespective of what the height.
Right. Thank you for that clarification.
Any other comments? Any comments from the audience?
Hearing none, I'd ask if any of the supervisors would like to entertain a motion regarding the ordinance at this time.
I would, Madam Chairman and Mr. Solicitor, I would make a motion that we amend
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. As, after the fact, do you want to close the record for this?
Sure, let's close the record.
I would like to thank this board, and I would like to thank the public if you've done any homework on this. We've got a really severe problem with some of these buildings, and if we get into any kind of an active situation, whether it be fire, medical, or worse that we've had nowadays, we have not had communications. This allows the departments to be able to talk to one another when they are in what I call the circle of danger. So thank you, board members, for
Bellingham incident, last year, that we did have some communication issues with that.
we had major issues once they got in the building.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in an active shooter situation, in the beginning stages, until everybody gets organized, they didn't know where he was, or they didn't know where that person was. So they immediately go for the first thing, which is residence protection to get in the buildings. And that's where they didn't have the communication.
That's a good example. Okay. That's one example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on it.
All right. Let's reopen for the next public hearing, which is on a conditional use application before the East Goshen Township Board of Supervisors. Specifically, the board is in receipt of a conditional use application dated March 29th, 2019 of applicant Christopher Zampano, CZ Woodworking LLC. The subject property's address is 1422 Ardley Circle, tax parcel ID number 53-4-107, which is located within the township's R2 residential zoning district. Specifically, the applicant seeks approval to operate a woodworking business as a home occupation within a two-story accessory building that's located on that subject property that I made reference to. The R2 zoning district allows home occupations by conditional use pursuant to zoning ordinance sections 240-9E1 and 240-32J. The board, in accordance with timing requirements of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, is timely convening tonight's public hearing. However, the applicant has requested a continuance to a subsequent hearing date for purposes of engaging in expert acoustic engineer. The board is agreeable to the continuance request and the stated purpose thereof. For purposes of scheduling, the board will look to accommodate the various parties, the board itself, within its reasonable control and in accordance with its usual policies and practices. So with that said, we now need to establish a new hearing date on the record so as to not have to re-advertise. So I'd ask that we temporarily take this matter off the record and discuss.
Ryan, do you know, as the applicant provided a framework of the boundaries that he would like to see the hearing take place, within the hearing take place?
Yes, based on communications, we understand that the applicant is interested in moving forward, but is also interested in engaging an expert for purposes of demonstrating compliance with the code requirements. So to ensure that there's sufficient time for that to take place, we're continuing tonight's hearing, and they've requested certain dates in July in accordance with the board's usual meeting dates. The preferred date, as far as I understand it, from counsel for the applicant is July 2nd. That's a Tuesday. And as a backup date, it's been requested to convene or reconvene on Tuesday, July 9th. As a last resort, the date of Tuesday, July 16th was also provided, and that is the last day through which this board has been granted an extension of time to begin the substantive portion of the hearing.
I'm gonna suggest July 9th, July 2nd, people are in the holiday mode with the holiday, the Independence Day on Thursday, the 4th. And on the 16th, I believe we have another conditional use. So I would suggest to my colleagues that the 9th would be a good date.
That has the advantage as it could be a single issue meeting and we could have enough time for all the different parties to be able to make statements.
Good point.
Mike, just so you know, I mentioned it earlier, I cannot commit to that date at this time. I think I'm the only one.
Right, so just as a board of 5, we would need 3 present. So long as we're confident that there will be 3 available on July 9th, then I think as a board, you guys should be comfortable in establishing that hearing date.
I think the important thing is that for people that don't normally come to our meetings, we reserve at the beginning of the year all the Tuesdays to have a meeting. Now, we normally have them on the first and third Tuesday, but the 9th is an intermediate, and it gives us the opportunity to do this. And at the end of the month, we likewise have the same thing, which is fortuitous, because if we have to have a second meeting on the same subject matter, we can do it if we choose to at the end of the month, and that, which will be the 4th Tuesday. So that's what's going on, and my experience has been, I'm sure some of the others, we don't want to have a hearing, a conditional use hearing where there's many people that are involved in it, or want to testify to it with respect to that you don't want to have it on a holiday weekend. I mean, it doesn't make any sense because people go away. And it makes people very uncomfortable if they have to miss it and they feel that they didn't get a fair shot at saying what they want to say. So I'm in agreement with Mike with respect to rescheduling this hearing for the 9th of July.
Marty, I also appreciate you mentioning the fact there could be a second hearing, it could be multiple hearings, but there could be a second hearing. And Madam Chair, if we could set some parameters for the meeting on the 9th, as I've said before, and I think I've heard it echoed, not much productive happens after 2.5 hours at a meeting, and it usually deteriorates. And I would suggest that we have an outside time of 9:30 at the end date. If we can complete it by 9 o'clock, great, but come 9:30, second hearing, if we can agree on that.
Good thought.
It's fine.
Thanks.
Very good.
And we'll just, that'll be the only item on the agenda.
Yes, that'll be a standalone conditional use hearing.
Okay, and you'll be with us, Ryan?
Yes,
Okay.
or Crystal.
Or
Yes.
Kristen, okay.
Let's go back on the record then, if we may. So the board has collectively decided to reschedule tonight's conditional use hearing on the CZ woodworking application to July 9th, 2019 at 7 p.m. This matter will not be, nor does it need to be, re-advertised by letter or in newspaper print as it was done previously. So if there's nothing further from the board regarding this conditional use application, I will call a recess until July 9th, 2019 at 7 p.m.
And I would
Thank
also ask for the record that if we've agreed that 9:30 would be the outside time for that reschedule.
We'll put that on the agenda.
Thank you.
Is there a motion necessary?
Thank you. All done.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Sir, Ryan, you'll have time just for that.
Okay, there is no old business. So we'll move to new business. We're going to consider a recommendation for a utility vehicle replacement.
This is possibly known as a gator, but they do 1999, past this time. So,
This is, looks like a good bid here, and I just want to confirm with the low recommended bid, from Pro Power Equipment, that does include the dump, the hydraulic dump as well?
Yes.
Okay, that's a great value. Unless there's, questions, preceding the motion, Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that we award the purchase of this all-terrain vehicle to Power Pro Equipment in the amount of $12,809 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Any comments? Anything from the audience? All in favor?
Oh, aye, yes, Marty.
Are you voting?
Aye.
Okay,
And note, and possibly note that, the $14,000 was budgeted, so good job there.
Good night, thank you.
all right, next,
Very heavily used. The only problem we have for the young boy or ladies and gentlemen is the lack of shading in certain areas. Park and Rec has looked at this. They've taken a lot of input. They've discussed it between themselves and with residents. So there is a shade structure that Park and Rec would like to install at the playground. And how it would be funded, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, is we would initially, East Goshen Township would pay for the installation. Then the Friends of East Goshen would come in behind the installation after it's done. And it looks like they pretty much make us whole within a couple $100s. So the estimated price of the, not estimated, it's like a pretty firm price of the sale is $8,973. And if that were approved and installed, the Friends of East Goshen will reimburse East Goshen Township when it is complete for the amount of $8,587. That leaves a $386 match that the township has to do. So I would ask the board to take this into consideration, and I would ask for the motion to approve the shade structure as outlined in the June 10th, 2019 overview, project notes, and backup pricing from Burke and so forth.
okay, I'd like to add a little to that. The Friends of East Goshen had offered to fund a 12 by 12 shade sale. The reason this is more expensive is we're going with a 15 by 15 foot shade sale. And
Can I clarify that?
And the sale is minimal. I think the price is what they had.
Yeah, we're basically taking the money that was raised from the buy a brick program
Yes.
second round, and the buying up that extra however many square feet is a nominal.
Is on East Goshen anyway.
area where the young kids are totally in the sun.
Not entirely. It will include some of that. Let's see.
That's mostly the same, but it will
Sand
have a
area.
little bit.
Sand area. Yeah, let's not call it the sandbox. It's called the sand area. It's a
Sand
really
area.
large area.
Okay.
And that, along with some future projects, will handle any problem.
Okay.
This is the biggest need right now, I believe, according to Park and Rec.
So you made a motion to approve it.
Is
I
there a
made a
second?
motion to approve the installation of $8,973 for the shade sale, realizing that the Friends of East Goshen will reimburse us on completion of $8,587.
I'll second that motion.
John, just a quick question. I did hear what you said, but have we gotten in writing, first of all, for those that don't know it, the Friends of East Goshen is independent of the board, independent of the township, and is a fundraiser generally for things that are in the park, but not necessarily that, although this is. Have they sent us confirmation that they will?
At their May meeting, they passed a motion to agree in principle, something like that, to reimburse the township from the proceeds of the bricks or the cost of the sale.
Now-
So should we have a friendly amendment to the motion that conditioned upon?
No, it would be a
No?
reimbursement.
Okay,
I mean.
okay, I don't wanna complicate it.
You can
I don't wanna
throw me under the bus. I could not imagine that this is not.
I don't know.
We wouldn't want to
That's
throw
what
you in
I'm
the bus,
sure.
because you're gonna need to work extra hours to make up the difference.
John, the reason I asked the question was to be assured that they had the money, but also, I mean, I know I did, and I'm sure a lot of other people have received the fundraising request for the community day. This has, these two things are independent of.
Yeah, so in the financial statements of Friends, we, for specific projects or funding sources, we reserve them. So this has already been reserved in their financial statements. It's broken out as a specific, reserve fund balance.
Okay, fine, thank you, John.
There's a second to the motion.
Yeah. Are there any more comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
I think a good shout out to all the residents who have purchased bricks to make it happen. That's a good deal. We wouldn't have the money if it weren't for the residents, stepping up and paying. I think, what do we pay, $100 a brick?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just great, so.
And you know what, Park and Rec and, Jason, for this Park and Rec has really put an awful lot of time in here.
Yes.
Jason,
Yeah,
along with the residents buying into the buy a brick.
Yeah. there's a,
Group effort from our community, that's terrific.
Next,
Yeah.
consider authorizing execution of application for the municipal recycling program performance grant.
yeah, this is annual.
Yeah, this is an annual thing. I just thought perhaps you, were interested in what we send in. Now we'll submit the request now, and then we'll see when Harrisburg sends us the money. So,
Well, they caught up a little bit last year, but they have been running 2 years behind.
That's
So-
good.
Yeah, Act 101 recycling grant,
I'll second.
performance grant.
Any comments? Comments from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
On Saturday, June 8th, E-Force held an electronic recycling event in the township park. In total, 23,702 pounds of e-waste were collected, including 6,741 pounds of TVs. This figure is about 9% higher than the December 1st, 2018 event. And I won't go through all the numbers again. There was a decline between June 2018 and June 19, and it's likely due to the fact that we're now offering 2 events a year instead of just one. We have not received any complaints about the event, and it appears that it was successful yet again. The next e-waste event will be held on the morning of Saturday, November 9th.
With all those TVs recycled, does that mean that there's a trend that people are watching less of that box?
They're getting new ones.
You
I
get
just,
big ones.
New ones,
Bigger.
new and bigger ones.
yeah, room size. Have at it.
There's no any other matter, but we do have.
Actually,
I am duty bound, I'm duty bound to make that announcement during any other matter. So we talked about it during Chairman's report, but the energy task force has been meeting. We actually had our first meeting with Cadmus, the consultant, and at that meeting, all the municipal representatives agreed to make an announcement about the progress at our next meeting. So that's what I'm doing.
Good.
So I think there's right off the bat, a little bit of a learning curve on all sides, the consultant municipalities as well as the sort of citizen advocates. And so it's an interesting dynamic. Obviously, right now we're building up for 19 or 23 days from now when we do the big visioning session. But I am going to subsequently just make an announcement about our progress in at every subsequent meeting until we're done.
Excellent.
John, if I could. John, the contractor doing your advising, are they familiar with working with municipalities, or are they more geared for companies?
No, actually, they are completely geared towards working with municipalities. I think to the extent to which there's a curveball, it's not just, in our case, it's not just municipalities, but we have 4 sort of resident clean energy advocates on the board, which is making just the dynamic different, not better or worse, but different. So I think to the extent there's a learning curve, it's around that, managing those expectations.
That's good.
But Cadmus, which is a large national blanket consulting firm, has done work with quite a number of municipalities.
I was just curious,
Cities and small
to learn the municipal way is different than corporate.
Well, that was one of my early concerns getting this started, is that, we get good representation on the advisory group. The managers are doing a great job investing in it. And that in that process, that there's the investment at the local level is strong enough that it becomes our plan. And I've said it before, not Cadmus's plan, because they can knock these things out.
That's exactly right. How do we not make it cookie cutter and make it tailored to this specific part of Chester County? That's the challenge.
I appreciate the update, John.
Thank you. We have some correspondence. We have a letter from West Whiteland Township, serving as notice that they are making an application through the Pennsylvania's Department of Community and Economic Development's Multimodal Transportation Fund to complete the Ship Road Couplet North segment. Now, what is that?
Yes.
The Ship Road Couplet project consists of a single-lane, one-way road for southbound Ship Road that would be located west of the Ship Inn, north of Lincoln Highway, and behind St. Mary's Chapel, south of Lincoln Highway.
Wow.
All lanes of existing Ship Road would become one-way northbound, north of Springdale Drive, with traffic signals for the northbound and southbound lanes synced along Lincoln Highway. It also includes a multi-use trail from the existing Chester Valley Trail to the proposed Chester Valley Trail extension south of the Route 30 bypass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty neat.
That's pretty
I think
neat.
it's pretty neat.
Yeah,
For
it's,
Ship Road to go one way, that's really interesting.
and to go around buildings and such, I don't know how long it's planned.
Unfortunately, there are competition for our trail grants,
Yeah, so we have to get them to hold
same
off
fund.
until we get other money.
So what do we do? As far as our partners go, our community partners, we wish them success.
Wish them well.
We do, we wish them well.
Yes.
When we ask them to hold off, please.
It's a big community, we all go through there,
I
so.
think I could be really mean and ask our chairman to define this, but I think I'll shift over to Ricky, because he's definitely going to have the answer to this. What in the world is a couple?
Essentially, as Janet noted, Ship Road is going to be split. And so the northbound will say existing lanes, it's just a terminology of these interpretation.
It's just for dissecting a road and making
It's a
it
cutoff.
It's a compliment, it's a compliment. to the
It's a
existing
cutoff.
road.
cut off.
Yeah, we want that.
Think of it as here you done now.
Is that a compliment?
Bell right there, Tom.
That's a left-handed compliment. Is it 9 o'clock?
Ricky,
No,
Sorry to break
You
down.
can't leave yet.
Rick, just as that was sort of a tongue in cheek, but behind this has to be some economic development project, I would think.
Oh,
What's
yes,
going on over there?
for sure.
There was a lot of discussion at West Whiteland Township. A developer that had the use by right to build some large number of
Three,
townhouses or
okay,
something.
I've got it here. 3 retail buildings, including a Wawa, 90 small lot single-family homes, and 60 townhouses are going to be built adjacent to that project. And the developer is going to, I believe, is gonna contribute to.
The alternative would have been, and the second point was the law. The alternative they would have had just a whole bunch more townhouses and apartments and no road improvements. So by this way, and I know there's a lot of discussion at West Whiteman about this. They had, couple hundred people at the meeting. There was a lot of.
This also gets a little bit of commercial in that area instead of just residential too, right?
Well, no, they have a lot of residential developments. They probably have 2,500 units under construction.
Not about 1,600, currently under construction, yeah.
But anyway, they made they accepted the recommendation of the planning commission. I think the planning commission was split, but anyway, the long story short is, they got road improvements. The alternative would have been a lot more houses and no road improvements.
Rick, is this along 30?
Yes.
This is going out Ship Road to 30, and you would turn on to the right to go to McMahon's place, their office buildings. We went to McMahon's office, we kept straight, where the little chapel's there, right across the street is the restaurant, Ship Inn, and then
You got the
it's also the site of the former Eckerman's Bakery place.
Where's the wall of
South side of the project.
It
Yes,
is
this is the
going to-
south side of the project, and now they're working on what they can do with the people on the north side.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
part of this, but yeah, that's part of it.
Part of it. Yeah. Okay.
project.
Next, we have a letter from Chrissy Houlihan, who is our representative, and she has opened a district office in the area and is ready to introduce herself. She's, and she asked if we have any questions, if we need any help to contact her office, her Westchester office.
Why don't we invite her to a meeting?
Her staff has been here,
Yeah, well, I
and
mean,
she
her.
will come, but I have to tell you that she is phenomenal.
Yeah, well.
And just as Carolyn is, she is just the same. She used to work for Carolyn Committa.
Really?
She was Carolyn Committa's director, until she struck out on her own. Very, very, very easy to work with and very customer friendly, meeting the residents.
I think it'd be great if you had some time to come to one of the meetings and introduce yourself and meet
I've
her.
already invited her.
Oh,
beautiful.
good. Thank you, Con.
I think,
Someone on behalf of the board.
but I think that the board ought to collectively invite her to.
Yeah, I do
And
too.
if she accepts the invitation, we need to make that fact known to people who may want to come and ask her questions and so forth. So from Washington,
Mhm.
volunteers to reach out to the local community.
I agree.
And I think Mike's got the right idea that informing, that it would be really, I don't know if she's gonna agree to come, but if she did, I think it would be really informative, and we should try to do whatever we can do to publicize the fact that she would be here.
Yeah, leave our schedule completely open according to hers.
Oh, yeah, we can always schedule a
Well,
meeting.
let's reach out to her and see what her schedule's like and what we can arrange.
Yeah.
Okay,
And,
next, we have a letter from the Lionville Fire Company, which I will proceed to read. It's, Dear Rick, it's with great esteem and appreciation I find myself writing this letter to you. I'm sure you are aware we had a successful trench rescue Wednesday afternoon. Without the help of East Scotians workers assisting us, we would have had a much different outcome. Like most small-town American volunteer fire companies, Lionville has the responsibility to respond and mitigate just about anything thrown at us. Unfortunately, in the 21st century, volunteerism is not as strong as it was back in the 70s. Our increased training demands and call volume has increased tenfold. Yet our membership has decreased proportionally. Your township employees continue to make a difference and help bridge the gap between volunteers and paid staff. Please extend my gratitude to the supervisors for allowing them to continue to help us and keep our communities safe. I would like to especially compliment your insight allowing Mark Miller to get your employees trained and prepared for such an emergency. It's amazing how often our municipalities work and train together. In the fire service, we call it mutual aid. And I can tell you, without mutual aid, we would not be a successful entity. We just don't have the resources we used to have. We need help every day, and Wednesday we needed specialized help. East Goshen Township provided exactly what we needed. I do not write letters very often, and I don't want you to think this is some ploy with an ulterior agenda. It's a thank you for allowing me to be able to tell this victim's wife, yes, he is alive and out of the hole. You need to meet him at Paoli Hospital.
Well done.
Respectfully, William Lenahan.
Yeah, well done.
I have read this letter 5 times and I cry every
I
time.
know, I can hear it, Janet, that's wonderful. That's
I
wonderful.
do, every time I read it, I cry.
Those are good
I
tears.
think it's important for everybody to know, just like as a cooperative, that we have enabled a number of our public works people who are themselves fire guys to where they live, to be ready if a call comes in, to drop everything they're doing if they can, and take off and be the first ones there in many cases. And this has happened in many cases. And I think this one is really significant in that you're talking about somebody who's trapped and, you know, if you don't get there and do something about it, you're going to lose them. And I would think it's most appropriate if we send a letter to Mark Miller specifically and to the staff individually to express our appreciation for them to take the time to do this, because really the impact on us isn't really that great, that they shouldn't be able to do this. And I do know from talking to our folks that other townships have talked to Mark about how we set this up and function so that they might be able to do the same thing, because in this day and age of the fire companies, the EMTs, it's very difficult to get volunteers. And it's also very difficult to get EMTs, which you have to pay for. So this really is a great way of helping the community at large. And it's a great way to get publicity for East Goshen, because the people, when these guys pull up in the morning, often they have the fire truck with them. They come down at night, put it here so the fellows have it in the morning to get going, and they have all this stuff that they need to do there. They just stop what they're doing and off they go. And I have been made aware of a number of times that they were indeed the first ones there, and in some cases, like this one, they've actually saved people's lives. So they deserve much credit, and Mark recommending to us to do what we're doing, he also deserves a lot of credit for doing that. And in fact, if you don't know this, he's a wonderful leader of the Public Works Department, and the fellows have a great deal of respect for him.
I would follow that up, Marty, with the form of the letter being a commendation that each of those gentlemen can put in their personnel file.
It's fine.
Okay, good.
This was our fire company. This was a trench rescue.
That's
So
right.
it was a
That's
special
right.
ed. Yeah, so it was special ed. We do have a letter for that.
That's great.
Good. Okay,
All right.
last correspondence, is notification, there's a conditional use letter for CTDI at 1339 Enterprise Drive. They're going to have they're asking for a conditional use. It will be before the planning commission on July 10th. All right, I had skipped the part if we have continued public comment. Does anyone have anything they want to say?
Everybody wants to come.
That sounds good to me. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion is adjourned.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a nice week.
This is great.
Yeah, that was fine.
I'll
Mike, I hate to say, we got another meeting.
not, well,
You can sign.
we'll see, I don't know.
Say-